Captain Ray Nakamura stood at the viewport of the deep space mining vessel, Stellar Forge, watching the automated harvesters carve through the metallic asteroid belt of the Kuiper region. 20 years of deep space mining had taught her to trust her instincts, and something felt off about today's readings. "Dr. Harrison," she called to her ship's lead scientist, "I need your eyes on these frequency patterns." Marcus Harrison drifted over in the zero-gravity environment, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic displays. The aging physicist had joined the mining operation to study quantum anomalies in deep space, but mostly he helped optimize their mining algorithms. Today, however, his expertise would prove invaluable. "These patterns," he muttered, enlarging a section of the data stream, "they're not natural. Too ordered, too precise." His fingers danced across the controls, isolating specific frequencies. "Captain, this is a signal." Within hours, the Stellar Forge's mining operations had been suspended. The ship's powerful sensors, normally used to detect valuable mineral deposits, were repurposed to trace the source of the mysterious transmission. What they found defied explanation. A crystalline structure, roughly the size of a small car, drifting in the void between Kuiper belt objects. No material composition," Dr. Harrison reported, his voice tight with excitement. "The object appears to exist partially in quantum space. It's broadcasting on frequencies we didn't even know existed." The recovery operation took 3 days of careful maneuvering. When they finally brought the object into the ship's cargo bay, its surface began to pulse with an inner light. Before anyone could react, it projected a holographic message that would change humanity's understanding of their place in the universe forever. The being in the hologram was humanoid, but clearly alien, its proportions slightly wrong, its skin an impossible shade of silver blue. When it spoke, the ship's eyes struggled to translate. "To any civilization that finds this warning, you are our last hope. We are the Centauri Collective, and by the time you receive this, we will likely be gone." The entity comes. It devours not just matter and energy, but consciousness itself. We have fled across 12 galaxies, leaving mornings like this one in our wake, hoping to find someone, anyone, who might succeed where we failed. The hologram shifted, showing images that made hardened space miners turn away in horror. Entire star systems being consumed by what looked like living darkness. Planets twisted into impossible shapes. Civilizations far more advanced than humanity falling before an enemy they couldn't comprehend. The entity cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be contained. Every defense we created, it absorbed and turned against us. Every weapon we devised only made it stronger. Our last act is to share our knowledge, in hopes that those who come after might find a way. Dr. Harrison worked frantically to download and decode the vast database contained within the crystal. "Captain," he called out, his face pale, "according to these astronomical references, the entity is already in our galaxy. The Collective's predictions show it reaching our solar system within 5 years." Captain Nakamura's mind raced. Every instinct honed by decades in deep space screamed that this was real. "Get me Earth Defense Command. Priority Ultra Black. Authentication code Sigma 709. As the communications officer rushed to comply, Nakamura studied the holographic images of the entity's advance through space. Something caught her eye, a pattern in how it moved, how it consumed. The entity wasn't just destroying civilizations, it was learning from them, adapting their technologies and strategies. "Dr. Harrison," she called out suddenly, "these civilizations that fell, what do they all have in common?" The physicist scrolled through the database, his eyes widening. They were all highly advanced. Quantum technology, zero-point energy, faster than light travel. And humanity. We're primitive by comparison. We barely understand quantum mechanics. We're still using fusion power. We haven't even colonized Mars yet. A grim smile crossed Nakamura's face. Maybe that's not a weakness. Maybe that's our advantage. Before Harrison could respond, the ship's sensors screamed a warning. Something was emerging from quantum space, a tear in reality itself. Through it came a ship unlike anything they'd ever seen, its hull covered in writings similar to those on the crystal. Collective vessel detected. The ship's AI announced. Design matches database records. Age, approximately 300 years. From the alien ship came a transmission. The words halting and desperate. We tracked the beacon. Please, we are the last. The entity follows close behind. Help us. Captain Nakamura straightened her uniform, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Humanity's first contact would not be a moment of triumph or peaceful exchange, but a desperate warning from the last survivors of a dying civilization. And behind them, drawing ever closer, came something that had already devoured 1,000 worlds. Open a channel, she ordered, and get me Earth Defense Command again. Tell them everything is about to change. In the vast darkness of the Kuiper Belt, as humanity faced its first glimpse of a threat beyond comprehension, Captain Nakamura couldn't help but smile. The advanced civilizations had failed because they fought the entity with complexity and technology. Perhaps what was needed was something simpler, something more primitive, something more human. The game was about to begin, and humanity would play it their way. 2 months after the Kuiper Belt incident, the underground facility known as Project Aegis hummed with activity. 3 kilometers beneath the Nevada desert, humanity's best minds worked to understand and prepare for a threat they could barely comprehend. Commander Diana Patel stood before the holographic display of the collected ship, now safely hidden in lunar orbit. Her dark eyes studied the readings for the 1,000th time, searching for answers in the alien vessel's complex design. Their technology should have been enough, she muttered, more to herself than to Dr. Jack O'Neill, the quantum physicist beside her. The collective had mastered dark energy, constructed artificial dimensions, bent time itself, and still they fell. That's exactly why they fell, Jack replied, pulling up data from the crystal archive. Look at this pattern. Every civilization that tried to fight the entity with advanced technology ended up making it stronger. It's like trying to fight a fire by throwing rocket fuel at it. Before Diana could respond, the facility's AI announced an incoming transmission. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Victor Rosenberg, head of Earth's hastily assembled Unified Defense Council. Commander Patel, Dr. O'Neill, the Admiral's weathered face was grim. We've detected quantum disturbances in the Oort cloud. The entity's scouts have arrived ahead of schedule. How close are we to implementing the survivors' defensive technologies? Diana exchanged glances with Jack. Sir, we're pursuing a different strategy. The collective's technology won't save us. It'll just make the entity stronger. We need to think smaller, not bigger. Explain. Jack stepped forward, pulling up his latest simulations. The entity feeds on complexity. Admiral, it absorbs advanced technology and uses it to evolve. But what we've discovered is fascinating. It struggles with simpler systems, basic electromagnetic fields, primitive nuclear reactions, even certain types of radio waves. They're too basic for it to process efficiently. You're suggesting we fight in cosmic horror with technology from the 1940s. Rosenberg's skepticism was clear. Not exactly, Diana interjected. We use our understanding of advanced physics to deploy primitive weapons in sophisticated ways. The collective survivors are helping us modify their quantum sensors, not to fight the entity, but to predict where it can't perceive. The display shifted to show a new prototype, a satellite that looked almost crude compared to the collective's sleek designs. We're calling it Project Blackstone, Diana continued. Simple electromagnetic pulse generators, guided by quantum targeting systems. The entity won't see them as weapons at all. And the survivors? What do they think of this downgrade? They think we're insane, Jack admitted with a slight smile. But they also admit they've never seen anything like our approach. The entity evolved to counter increasing complexity. It never had to deal with a species choosing to step backward. A new alarm blared through the facility. Jack's fingers flew across the controls, bringing up deep space telemetry. 6 quantum ruptures detected in the Oort cloud, he announced, his voice tense. The scout vessels, they're not what we expected. The images resolved to show what looked like tears in space itself, each one housing a form that seemed to shift between states of matter. They're not ships at all, Diana breathed. They're extensions of the entity itself. How long? Rosenberg demanded. At their current pace, 3 months until they reach Pluto, maybe 4 until they hit the inner solar system. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. You have 1 month to prove your theory, Commander. 1 month to show that these primitive weapons can hurt it. After that, we deploy the collective's technology. Consequences be damned. After the transmission ended, Diana turned to Jack. We need to accelerate the Blackstone tests. Get me Captain Nakamura on the Stellar Forge. Her crew has the most experience with the entity's quantum signatures. Diana, Jack's voice was quiet. There's something else in the data. The entity, it's not just adapting anymore. It's anticipating. Every civilization it consumed added to its ability to predict and counter new threats. Then we'll be unpredictable. Diana's voice was hard with determination. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, Jack. It's our ability to think differently, to try the insane option when the logical ones fail. In lunar orbit, aboard the collective's vessel, the alien survivors watched Earth's preparations with a mixture of confusion and growing hope. Humanity's approach defied their understanding of warfare, of progress, of basic logic itself. Perhaps they began to think that was exactly why it might work. As the entity's scouts probed the outer edges of the solar system, humanity raced against time to perfect weapons that any advanced civilization would consider obsolete. In the depths of Project Aegis, Commander Patel and her team worked to prove that sometimes the best way forward was to step back. The price of fighting the entity had always been measured in worlds, in civilizations, in entire species lost to its endless hunger. But perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's primitive approach would exact a different kind of price, one the entity wasn't prepared to pay. The first battle for humanity's survival began not with a bang, but with a whisper. Deep within the orbit of Neptune, aboard the retrofitted stellar mining vessel Stellar Forge, Captain Ray Nakamura watched as the entity's scout formations approached. Blackstone arrays powered at minimum. Lieutenant Kira Wong reported from her station. Electromagnetic signatures masked as background radiation. The young officer's hands were steady despite the tension that filled the bridge. Through the quantum sensors gifted by the collective, they could see the true nature of their enemy. The entity's scouts weren't ships or probes in any conventional sense. They were fragments of living void, tears in reality that shifted between dimensions like smoke in the wind. Remember, Commander Diana Patel's voice came through the secure quantum channel from Project Aegis. These are just scouts. They're looking for advanced technology, quantum signatures, anything that marks us as a worthy civilization to consume. Don't give them what they expect. Captain Nakamura nodded, though her throat was dry. Initiate Operation Rockslide. Keep our emissions at 20th century levels. Across the solar system, humanity's trap was set. Hundreds of seemingly primitive satellites, their true nature hidden beneath layers of basic technology, waited in carefully calculated orbits. Each one powered by nothing more complex than nuclear batteries and simple electromagnetic generators. The entity's scouts moved closer, their quantum signatures rippling with what the collective survivors had identified as curiosity. They'd expected to find a civilization preparing advanced defenses, deploying quantum weapons, or at least attempting to communicate on sophisticated subspace frequencies. Instead, they found nothing. Just the expected background radiation of a developing solar system, crude radio waves, and basic space technology. They're scanning us, Jack O'Neill reported from his station on Luna Base, looking right through our primitive equipment like it's not even there. His voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. The scouts pressed forward, penetrating deeper into the solar system. Their movements became more aggressive, more frustrated. Where were the quantum defenses, the dimensional barriers, the temporal weapons that every other civilization had tried to deploy? Now, Diana's order came as the scouts reached the calculated position. Initiate Blackstone Protocol Alpha. Across the solar system, hundreds of seemingly primitive satellites suddenly activated. Their electromagnetic pulses, carefully tuned to frequencies the entity had never needed to defend against, slammed into the scout formations from all directions. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The scouts, expecting attacks through quantum space or dimensional tiers, had no defense against the crude but massive electromagnetic assault. Their forms distorted, their quantum signatures fluctuating wildly. Direct hit, Kira called out, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. Scout formations are destabilizing. They're actually trying to retreat. But the entity hadn't consumed countless civilizations without learning caution. Even as its scouts reeled from the primitive attack, space itself seemed to tear open as something much larger emerged into the solar system. "Mother of God," Jack whispered as the readings came in. "That's not a scout. That's a fragment of the entity itself." The thing that emerged defied description. A mass of twisted space-time that seemed to devour light itself. But unlike the scouts, this manifestation radiated power on every conceivable spectrum. It had come prepared for any weapon, any defense, any technology that a worthy civilization might deploy. Maintain current protocols. Diana's voice was steady despite the cosmic horror bearing down on them. Let it think we got lucky with the scouts. Let it think we're still primitive. The entity's fragment surged forward, its quantum tendrils reaching out to analyze these unexpectedly troublesome primitives. It expected to find fear, panic, a desperate rush to deploy whatever advanced weapons these beings had been hiding. Instead, the humans appeared to be falling back in disarray, their ships broadcasting crude radio distress calls, their satellites maintaining their simple electromagnetic pulses. "It's working," Jack reported, his voice tense with concentration. "The entity's trying to analyze our technology, but it keeps overlooking the Blackstone arrays because they're too simple. It's searching for complexity that isn't there." But victory wouldn't come so easily. As they watched, the entity's fragment began to adapt, its form shifting to generate fields that would neutralize their electromagnetic attacks. It was learning, evolving, just as it had done countless times before. "Right on schedule," Diana whispered. "Captain Nakamura, initiate Phase 2. What happened next would be debated in military academies for generations to come. As the entity adapted to counter their primitive weapons, humanity revealed their true strategy. The simple electromagnetic pulses had never been the real weapon. They were just the bait. The true purpose of Operation Rockslide was about to become clear, and with it, humanity's first real chance at hurting something that had never known defeat. The entity's fragment loomed over Neptune's orbit, its vast form distorting space itself as it moved to crush these unexpectedly troublesome primitives. But in the command center of Project Aegis, Commander Diana Patel allowed herself a grim smile. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega," she ordered. "Show them why humanity is different." Across the solar system, the seemingly primitive Blackstone arrays underwent a transformation. The simple electromagnetic pulses they had been emitting suddenly shifted pattern, creating a complex interference web. Not in quantum space where the entity expected threats, but in normal spacetime, the realm it had long since dismissed as irrelevant. The quantum sensors from the collective were never meant to be weapons, Jack O'Neill explained to the watching military command. They were our eyes, letting us see exactly how the entity moves between dimensions. And now we have its pattern, Diana finished. "Lieutenant Wong, activate the resonance cascade." The primitive electromagnetic pulses synchronized, their frequencies matched precisely to the entity's dimensional shifting. Each pulse was simple enough to avoid triggering the entity's defenses, but together they created something new. a resonance that forced the entity to stay in normal spacetime. The fragment writhed, its form becoming more solid as it lost the ability to shift between dimensions. For the first time in its ancient existence, it was trapped in a single plane of reality. Phase 3, Diana commanded. Captain Nakamura, you have weapons free. The Stellar Forge and its sister ships surged forward, their hulls bristling with what looked like antiquated nuclear missiles. But these weapons had been modified with a single purpose, not to destroy the entity, but to change it. Nuclear fission, Jack explained, his voice tight with excitement. The most primitive form of nuclear reaction, something so basic the entity never bothered to develop defenses against it. And when combined with the resonance field, the missiles struck home. Instead of exploding, they created controlled fission reactions inside the entity's now solid form. The effect was devastating. Unable to shift dimensions, unable to adapt to something so crude, the fragment began to break apart. But the entity hadn't survived for eons by being predictable. Even as its fragment died, it sent out a pulse of quantum energy that bypassed all of humanity's defenses. The pulse carried information, everything it had learned about this new enemy. Multiple quantum signatures detected. Wang's voice was tense. Far side of Neptune. They're big. Really big. 3 new tiers in space appeared, each one housing a fragment larger than the first. The entity had learned from its defeat and adapted. Its new forms were already generating countermeasures to the resonance field. They're trying to brute force their way through, Jack reported, his hands flying over the controls. Simple physics won't be enough this time. It doesn't have to be, Diana responded. Admiral Rosenberg, request permission to initiate Project Prometheus. There was a long pause on the command channel. Project Prometheus was theoretical, untested, and according to every scientific principle they understood, probably impossible. It was also the most primitive weapon ever conceived to fight an advanced enemy. The entity adapts to complexity, Diana argued, sensing the Admiral's hesitation. So we give it something so fundamentally simple that adaptation becomes impossible. You're talking about weaponizing the basic forces of reality itself. Rosenberg's voice was heavy with the weight of the decision. If this fails, we die anyway, Diana cut in. But we die fighting our way, not trying to match the entity's complexity. Another pause, then, permission granted. God help us all. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, in a chamber that made the Manhattan Project look like a high school science experiment, humanity's ultimate weapon began to power up. Not a quantum device, not a dimensional tear, not even a conventional nuclear weapon. Instead, Project Prometheus was designed to do something so simple it bordered on insanity: temporarily alter the fundamental forces of nature within a localized space. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, the basic building blocks of reality itself. All ships fall back beyond the safety threshold, Diana ordered. Project Prometheus initiating in 5 minutes. Let's show this thing what happens when you corner primitive humans. As the countdown began, Jack looked at the quantum readings of the approaching entity fragments. They were already adapting to the resonance field, already developing countermeasures to the fission weapons. But how do you adapt to a change in the fundamental forces that govern your existence? The entity was about to learn that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most devastating, and humanity was about to prove why being primitive might just be the greatest advantage of all. The activation of Project Prometheus began with a whisper. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, machines that looked deceptively simple hummed to life. No quantum fields, no dimensional manipulation. Just pure, fundamental physics pushed to its absolute limit. Prometheus field generating at 15% capacity. Jack O'Meal reported, his voice steady despite the sweat on his brow. Basic forces responding as predicted. In space, the entity's fragments surged forward, their forms twisting reality as they approached Earth. They had analyzed the humans' primitive weapons, developed countermeasures for the resonance fields, prepared for any variation of the fission attacks. They weren't prepared for what came next. Prometheus at 30% capacity, Jack announced. Gravitational constant shifting in target zone. Around Neptune's orbit, space itself began to change. Not in the complex, multi-dimensional way the entity manipulated reality, but in a fundamentally simpler manner. Gravity itself began to fluctuate, following new rules that even the entity's vast intelligence couldn't predict. They're noticing, Lieutenant Wong reported from the Stellar Forge. The fragments are trying to compensate, but they look confused. Commander Diana Patel watched the quantum readings with intense focus. The entity had evolved to handle any complex attack, any advanced technology. But this was like changing the basic rules of the game itself. Prometheus at 50% capacity. Electromagnetic force coupling beginning to shift. The fragments' forms began to distort, not from any attack, but from reality itself changing around them. They tried to adapt, to shift dimensions, to apply their vast knowledge of physics. But how do you adapt when the very laws that govern your existence are being rewritten? Multiple quantum fluctuations. Wong's voice was tight with excitement. The fragments. They're trying to retreat. But retreat wasn't an option. The Prometheus field had created a bubble of altered physics around them, a space where the fundamental forces of nature followed humanity's rules, not the universe's. 75% capacity. Strong nuclear force modification initiating. The fragments began to break apart, not from any weapon, but from their own complexity working against them. In this altered space, their intricate quantum structures became a liability. The more they tried to adapt, the more they destroyed themselves. They're sending out another quantum pulse, Jack reported, trying to warn the main entity. Diana's eyes hardened. Let them. Let it know exactly what happened here. Prometheus to full power. Show them humanity's final defiance. The chamber beneath the Nevada desert reached full activation. For a brief, terrible moment, the fundamental forces of reality within the target zone rewrote themselves completely. The fragments of the entity, beings that had consumed civilizations far more advanced than humanity, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed by weapons, not beaten by technology, simply rendered impossible by the most basic laws of physics themselves. The quantum pulse reached out into deep space, carrying the story of the entity's first true defeat. Behind it, humanity began to prepare. They had proven their theory, proven that the simplest solution could overcome the most complex enemy. Multiple quantum signatures detected at the edge of the solar system, Wong reported, her voice now calm. The entity itself, it's coming. Good, Diana replied, her eyes fixed on the readings from Project Prometheus. Let it come. We've learned something it never expected. The more complex you become, the more vulnerable you are to fundamental change. In the depths of space, something vast and ancient changed course, moving toward the solar system with purpose. The entity had consumed countless civilizations, adapted to millions of weapons, survived every complex attack ever devised. Now it faced an enemy that fought not with advanced technology, but with the basic building blocks of reality itself. An enemy that had learned the ultimate lesson. Sometimes the simplest solution is the one your opponent never sees coming. All stations. Diana's voice carried across every human ship and base in the solar system. Prepare for final defense protocols. The entity wants to see humanity's full potential. Let's show it why being primitive might just be the greatest weapon of all. As humanity prepared for its greatest battle, the collective survivors watched from their lunar base with a new emotion they had not felt in centuries. Hope. These humans, these brilliant primitives, had done what no advanced civilization had managed. They had hurt the entity. Not with complexity, not with advanced technology, but with an understanding of the most basic forces of nature itself. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. And for the first time in its ancient existence, the entity would face an enemy that didn't try to match its complexity, an enemy that chose to change the rules of reality itself. In the command center of Project Aegis, Commander Diana Patel allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes, the best way to win isn't to play the game better than your opponent, it's to change the game entirely. The fate of not just humanity, but of all surviving civilizations, now rested on this simple truth: the more complex you become, the more you have to lose when someone changes the basic rules of existence itself. The entity was about to learn why humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, but their ability to think differently, to go backward instead of forward, to change not just the game, but reality itself. The end was coming, and humanity was ready.